Hey everybody, Damien from Bay Ridge DIY. Welcome back to the DIY shop. This week we're going to be working with knotty alder. We have some 8-quarter knotty alder we're going to be working with and some 3-quarter knotty alder. We're going to make a kid's desk. It's a really simple project to do. I feel anybody could do it with a table saw, a drill, a couple screws. It's not a real hard project to do. Stick around, I'll show you how to do it. We start this project over at the miter saw. We take some 8-quarter knotty alder and cut it down to 30-inch lengths. We're going to need 4 pieces for the cross legs that we're making. After straight lining one side of the legs, I rip them down to 4 inches at the table saw. Now that we have the rough length cut and the width cut, I bring them over to the planer and cut them down to 1 3/4 inches. The great thing about having a white melamine work surface is that I can draw my plans right on my work surface. And once I am done with the project, a damp rag will wipe off any pencil marks. Using my drywall square, I mark out the outside width of my legs and the height. I then line up the boards I'm going to use for the legs and trace them onto the surface. I also mark on the board where the bottom and top are. Drawing your plans out like this to full size is a great way to find your angles of the tops and bottoms of your legs. Now that I have the angles cut, I set the boards back down on the table and mark out where I need to put my dados so the legs will fit together. With my dado blade installed in my table saw, I set it to 7/8 of an inch. I then cut out all the excess wood so the legs will fit together. Once I have the notches cut out of both legs and they fit snugly, I put them together. I then draw a center line from the side to side and top to bottom. This will give me a reference point for where I can pre-drill the holes for the screws. I use some Titebond 3 wood glue to glue these together, a couple screws, and then I fill the holes with a couple plugs. Speaking of plugs, I'd like to take this time to plug our YouTube channel. Please subscribe down below if you like these videos. We can keep making more of them and have fun doing it. The next step is to cut some notches in the top part of the X to hold the mounting board. With my dado blade still in place, I cut the notches out for the holding boards. I cut them 1 inch high and 2 inches wide. Using a piece of scrap, I cut the boards that will hold the table to the legs. I cut these 2 inches wide and 1 inch thick. At the miter saw, I cut them down to length and cut a 45-degree angle on each end. I pre-drill all the holes with a countersink bit on the bottom side of these boards. To attach the mounting boards to the legs, I use a 2-inch multi-purpose wood screw to hold it in place. Now that the base is done being built, I cut down some 8-quarter rustic alder on the miter saw. I cut these down to about 38 inches and then run them through my planer to get them down to a thickness of 1 3/4 inches. Using my straight line jig, I run my top boards through the table saw to get that edge nice and straight. After the first edge is straight, I run it back through the table saw and get both edges ready for gluing. Once both edges are ripped down, I use my biscuit joiner to cut slots to hold number 20 biscuits. Using Titebond 3 wood glue, I brush on a good amount of glue. I insert the biscuits, clamp them together, and let them dry overnight. When clamping these together, I make sure that the boards are as flush as I can possibly get on the top. This will save you a lot of time sanding later. Morning has come and my boards are dry. I take my scraper and I scrape off the excess glue on the top. I then draw pencil lines across the top to see my high and low points. This is a small project, so I just use my 3-inch wide belt sander. It takes a little while and makes a little bit of a mess. But, like I said earlier, alder is a pretty soft, forgiving wood, so it worked just fine. The last step on the top is to take it over to my panel saw and square the edges. For the upper portion of the desk, I mill down the scrap ends that I cut off of the 8-quarter earlier. I need one piece that's going to be over 36 inches, and the other piece is about 17 inches. I glue these together and cut them down at the table saw to 7 1/4 inches in width. With my miter fence, I cut down the sides to 17 inches, and I cut the top down to 36 inches. This will match the top of the desk. I glue up some narrow scrap boards of 3/4 inch alder to make my shelves and my middle divider. With my top section just set in place, I measure over 12 inches and make a line for my middle divider. This way I'll know where the screws go. The next step is to mark out where the dados for the shelves will go. I put the end and the middle divider together and transfer the lines across. I set the dado height to 1/4 inch. I'm using my 1/2 inch dado blade. I use a piece of masking tape to mark where the front of the dado blade is. This will act as a reference so I don't push the dado through the front of the board. Because we did not cut the dado to the front of the middle divider or the side panel, we need to notch out the shelf so it fits into the dado on the back side and sits flush on the front. I clamp the upper section in place with a couple of pipe clamps, making sure that the ends are flush. I pre-drill and then use a 3/8 inch bit to make a hole. I use a 2-inch multi-purpose screw to hold the two boards together. At the router table with my 1/2 inch roundover bit, I round over the front of all 3 shelves. I use some Titebond 3 wood glue and place the shelves in place, using a clamp to hold them together until the wood glue dried. On the top of the upper section, I make a centering mark above the middle divider. I put the centering mark 1 inch in from both sides. I then pre-drill each hole and then drill it out again with my 3/8 inch bit. I use 2-inch wood screws to hold it in place. Now it's time to get the upper section mounted to the table. I trace where the upper section is going to sit and then pre-drill the holes from the top, coming back and countersinking from the bottom so the screws sit flush. Before screwing the top in place, I take my large roundover bit and round over the front edge of the table. I'll put pieces of tape to mark so I don't go past where the upper section will be. Before assembly and the final sanding, I take some wood filler and fill in all of the cracked knots in the rustic alder. This will give it a better look when I clear coat it. I use my 3/8 inch plug cutter to cut some plugs out of some scrap stock I had laying around. If you don't have one of these, I suggest getting one. They're very handy. With a little bit of Titebond 3 wood glue, I tap the plugs into place. With alder being a little bit softer of a wood, it makes sanding really easy. I start out with a 60 grit sandpaper just to knock down all the high spots. Go into it with an 80, 100, and then a 120 for my finish. With the sanding complete, I roll on multiple thin layers of pre-cat lacquer. For small projects, this technique works really good. I put multiple coats on and sand with a 400 grit sandpaper in between each coat. Finally, time to assemble this project. I pre-drilled all the holes earlier, so it'll make assembly go really quick now that the finish is on. I don't use any wood glue when assembling the upper section to the top, just in case we have to remove it during transportation. It should be plenty strong enough with a couple screws. The last thing to do is add the back to the cabinet. I took a piece of 1/4 inch alder and clear coated it for the back. Finished up the kids' desk today. It was a great project to do. I know my kid's really going to enjoy it and get years of use out of it. She is 3 years old right now, so I made it a little bit taller than what she'd like now. We'll just put an adjustable chair at it and she can use it for years to come. I had a really good time building this. I really like working with alder lumber. It's an easy, forgiving wood to work with. You can make this desk any size you wanted to. You could scale it out to be a bigger desk, smaller desk. You could add things, take things away, whatever you like. I hope you found this video useful, and I hope you build one just like it or similar to it. Make your own projects, be yourself when you make this stuff. Check us out on Instagram. Bay Ridge DIY is our Instagram handle. Make sure you click below and subscribe to our channel. We really appreciate it if you subscribe. We can keep making more videos then and keep posting them to YouTube and to Instagram TV. We love doing this stuff, so keep on watching, and until next time, have a good one.